Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Glad you could join us because today we're really staring directly at the sun. We are talking about the absolute engine room of the global economy.
We really are. It's the machinery that decides who wins, who loses, and, ultimately what the world even looks like.
And I don't mean that as some kind of metaphor. I was digging into the aggregate data from the 2025 market reports in our source stack, and the number is just, well, it's hard to wrap your head around. $3 trillion.
This is a staggering figure. It's almost abstract at that size. It doesn't feel real.
Right. I mean, what even is that? That is the global deal value for mergers and acquisitions in a single year.
Yeah.
And to put that into a perspective that actually makes sense, because $3 trillion is just noise to most of us, you have to visualize it. You could buy every single team in the NFL.
Which is already a lot of football.
A lot of football. But you could do it 20 times over.
Yeah.
That is the sheer weight of capital we are talking about today. That's the amount of money moving around, shifting ownership, and just completely redefining industries.
And that capital is reshaping everything. I mean, it determines what apps are on your phone, what medicine is in your cabinet, and frankly, which countries control the critical supply chains of the future. It's not just business, it's the architecture of modern life.
Exactly. So today we are diving deep into M&A. And I know for a lot of people, that acronym just conjures up images of, guys in expensive suits staring at spreadsheets in a boardroom.
Or maybe a scene from Succession.
Yeah, exactly. High drama, shouting matches, private jets.
Which, to be fair to the screenwriters, isn't entirely inaccurate. There are suits, there are definitely spreadsheets, and yes, there are private jets involved.
Sure. But our mission today is to get past that cinematic version. We want to understand the actual mechanics. When you see that headline scrolling across the news ticker, Company A buys Company B for $10 billion, what actually happened? I mean, how do they find each other? How do they agree on that price?
And maybe the most important question of all, why do the statistics say that deal is probably going to fail?
That's the dirty secret of the industry, isn't it? Most of them just don't work. The failure rate is incredibly high.
It's astronomical.
We have a massive stack of sources today to help us figure this all out. We've got the 2025 and 2026 market trend reports from the big consulting firms, Bain, BCG, Deloitte. We have specialized playbooks on due diligence.
We've also got the legal frameworks from the EU, especially around foreign subsidies, which is a huge deal now.
And some fascinating technical documents on how AI is completely rewriting the rule book for deal sourcing in 2026.
It is a completely different game now than it was even 5 years ago. The tools, the speed, that would be an acquisition. An acquisition is binary. It's clear-cut. You have a buyer and you have a seller. Think of LVMH buying Tiffany & Co. a few years back. That was a massive news story. LVMH is the acquirer. They're the ones writing the enormous check.
And the old rule applies. He who holds the gold makes the rules.
Precisely. Because they're the one writing the check, they get to impose the framework. They are integrating Tiffany into their culture, their reporting lines, their supply chain. It's a takeover, plain and simple.
So Tiffany keeps its name on the door, but the brain of the organism has changed.
Exactly. It becomes a limb of the larger body. It's now part of the LVMH empire.
Okay, versus a merger. That feels like a much softer word. More collaborative.
A merger is much rarer and honestly much, much messier. Usually it's two companies of roughly equal size deciding to join forces. The source material points to the Fnac and Darty deal in Europe as a classic example.
Right. Two big retail giants, similar market cap, deciding to team up.
Right. So in that scenario, it's not about one swallowing the other. The narrative is all about co-creation. You are taking entity A and entity B and trying to birth a new entity C. It's always positioned as a marriage of equals.
Which sounds lovely in a press release. We are coming together as equals.
It does. It sounds very harmonious. But in practice, equals is a total myth. Someone always ends up being slightly more in charge. But the mindset is completely different. You can't just barge in and fire everyone.
No, it requires diplomacy.
It requires negotiation on every little thing, from who gets to be the CEO of the new company to what kind of coffee is served in the break room. It's a much more delicate dance.
And then there's that third term that keeps popping up in the financial papers. Consolidation.
Which is really just the technical financial term for it. It's the act of combining the balance sheets.
Right.
But whether you call it a merger, an acquisition, or a consolidation, the thing that gets investors to open their wallets is this magical and often mythical concept called synergy.
Ah, yes. Synergy, the buzzword to end all buzzwords. I feel like I hear that in every corporate spoof ever made.
It is definitely overused, no question. But in the world of M&A, it has a very hard mathematical definition. It is the belief, or, sometimes the core fallacy, that 1 plus 1 equals 3.
That by smashing these two companies together, you create value that simply didn't exist when they were separate entities. But let's play devil's advocate here. Where does that phantom value actually come from? Because usually, mathematically speaking, 1 plus 1 just equals 2.
It comes in 3 flavors, and they are definitely ranked by how much Wall Street trusts them. The first, and the one investors absolutely love the most, is cost synergy. This is what they call hard synergy.
Which is just a polite euphemism for firing people, isn't it?
In many cases, yes. It's about eliminating redundancy. Look at the American Airlines and U.S. Airways merger. That deal created the world's largest airline. When you do that, you simply don't need 2 global headquarters. You don't need 2 separate HR directors.
You don't need 2 IT support desks.
Exactly. You cut the duplicates, your expenses go down, and your profits go up. It's simple math.
Brutally simple.
And that's why investors love cost synergies. They are so easy to model on a spreadsheet. You can say, we will save $500 million in overhead within 18 months, and if you are ruthless enough, you can usually deliver that. It's tangible. You can touch it.
Okay, so that's the efficiency play, the cutting. What of the growth play? The happier version of synergy.
That would be revenue synergy. This is the soft synergy. It's much harder to prove, but the upside is potentially infinite. The classic example here is, of course, Facebook buying Instagram.
Right. They didn't buy Instagram just to save money on office space or fire their accountants.
Not at all. They bought it for the network effect. They bought it to capture a younger demographic that was starting to leave Facebook, and critically to plug Instagram into Facebook's incredibly sophisticated ad targeting engine. The whole theory was, we can sell more ads together than we ever could apart.
And in that case, 1 plus 1 equaled about 100.
It was a grand slam home run. But for every Facebook and Instagram, there's a merger where they thought they could cross-sell products, and it turns out the customers just didn't care.
It's a gamble on human behavior.
It is, and that's why revenue synergy is risky. It relies on people wanting something new, not just on your ability to cut costs.
And the third flavor?
Financial synergy. This one's a bit more technical, but it can drive massive deals. It involves things like tax benefits. For instance, if a company has been losing money for years, it has what they call net operating losses. A profitable buyer can acquire them and use those historical losses to lower their own tax bill.
So you're essentially buying a tax shield. That's the asset.
Exactly, or you're buying better credit. A massive conglomerate can borrow money at, say, 3% interest, while a small startup might be paying 8%. The moment the deal closes, instantly the cost of capital for that smaller business drops. That's instant value creation.
It's financial engineering at its finest. But looking at our notes, especially regarding the 2026 landscape, it seems like money isn't the only driver anymore. There's this desperation for talent that didn't exist in the same way before.
Acqui-hiring. This is huge in the tech sector, and specifically right now with artificial intelligence.
Explain that for us. I mean, why buy the whole company if you just want the people? Seems like a roundabout way to do it.
Because the people are the scarcest resource on the planet right now. Suppose you're a big AI company. You are desperate for machine learning engineers who specialize in large language models. Those people are incredibly hard to find.
Unicorns.
They are. You could spend 2 years trying to recruit them one by one, paying insane fees to recruiters, doing hundreds of interviews.
Oh.
Or you find a failing startup that happens to have a team of 20 brilliant engineers who have been working together for 3 years. You buy the company, maybe for $50 million. You shut down their product because, frankly, you don't care about it, and you keep the geeks.
That feels almost cruel, but incredibly efficient. You're paying $50 million essentially as a massive recruiting fee.
It is exactly that. And in the AI arms race of 2026, speed is everything. Acqui-hiring buys you a world-class team instantly. It buys you speed.
And then there's vertical integration. We're seeing a lot of this in manufacturing and automotive, according to the sources.
That's all about control. If you're a car maker in 2026, your single biggest nightmare is a battery shortage. If you can't get batteries, you can't sell cars. It's that simple. So you don't just sign a long-term contract with a battery maker.
You buy the battery maker.
You buy them. You own the supply chain, so you are never, ever at the mercy of a vendor again.
Okay, so we get the why. Companies want to cut costs, grow faster, get better taxes, or secure talent and supplies. Now I want to get into the how. because the sources outline this life cycle that goes from hunting to closing, and this is where the material gets really, almost sci-fi.
It's where the revolution is happening.
Yeah.
Let's look at phase one, sourcing, finding the target.
The old way was
Yeah.
golf courses and long lunches.
Golf, long lunches at the club, and investment bankers. It was a very reactive world. You sat in your office as a CEO, and an investment banker would send you something called a teaser.
A teaser. That sounds alluring.
It's a document, usually just 1 or 2 pages, and it's anonymous. It says something like, Project Bluebird, leading logistics company for sale, 50 million in EBITDA. Are you interested?
It's like being set up on a blind date by a mutual friend who wants to get a commission.
It was exactly that. And the problem is you were only seeing the deals that were officially on the market. You were seeing the same deals everyone else was seeing. And that means auctions. That means bidding wars.
But in 2026, sourcing has gone completely Moneyball. We're seeing this huge shift to proprietary sourcing using AI. The sources mention platforms like Synergy AI and SourceScript.
Synergy AI sounds like a villain in a cyberpunk movie, doesn't it?
It really does. But what does it actually do? How does it work?
It's essentially a hunter-killer algorithm. Instead of waiting for a company to raise its hand and say, I'm for sale, these tools are constantly scanning the entire internet for what they call traction anomalies.
Traction anomalies. Okay, break that down. What is the machine actually looking for?
It's looking for the digital exhaust fumes of success. It scans LinkedIn data. Hey, this small startup in Ohio just hired 15 new engineers in the last 3 months. That's a signal. It scans web traffic. Their user base is showing a classic hockey stick growth curve. It even analyzes social sentiment on Twitter or Reddit.
So the AI spots the smoke before the fire is visible to the naked eye.
That's the perfect way to put it. It identifies these off-market gems. You, the buyer, get a notification on your dashboard. Check out Company X. They are growing 200% year over year, and they haven't raised any VC money yet.
So you can call them up before they've hired a banker. You get to them before the auction starts. You completely avoid the bidding war.
That is the holy grail, proprietary deal flow. You get to the target while they're still accessible, and often you can get a much better price because you're the only one at the table.
Okay, so the AI finds the target. You take the CEO out to dinner. You charm them. Now comes the hard part, putting a price tag on it. Valuation.
This is the eternal tug of war. The seller always thinks their business is the next Apple. The buyer thinks it's a lemon with a fresh coat of paint.
So how do they bridge that gap? It feels impossible sometimes.
They use a few core methodologies, but the big one, the one they teach in every business school, is discounted cash flow, or DCF.
I've always found DCF to be a bit mystical. It feels like alchemy.
It's crystal ball gazing with a calculator is what it is. You are literally trying to predict the future profits of the company for the next 5 or 10 years. You guess. In 2029, they will make $100 million. Then you use a discount rate to calculate what that future money is worth in today's dollars.
But your whole model is based on a guess. If your prediction is wrong by even a tiny bit,
The whole number changes wildly. It is incredibly sensitive to assumptions. If you assume the company grows at 10% a year instead of 5%, the valuation might double. That's why they also use comparable transactions.
the comps.
Right. If a similar software company sold last month for 10 times its revenue, you argue yours should sell for 10 times revenue too. It's basic real estate logic. My neighbor's house sold for $1 million, so mine must be worth $1 million.
But there's a massive psychological trap here that the sources warn about. They call it the winner's curse.
The winner's curse is the deep irony of winning an auction. If you win, by definition, you are the person willing to pay more than anyone else on earth for that asset.
Which means every other smart person in the room thought it was worth less than you did. That's a very sobering thought.
Isn't it? You are the greater fool. And often, to justify that high price to your board of directors, you start to convince yourself that the synergies are going to be massive. You drink your own Kool-Aid, you overpay, and then you spend the next 5 years trying to dig yourself out of a very expensive hole.
So let's assume you agree on a price. You shake hands. You sign the letter of intent, the LOI. Is the deal done? Can you pop the champagne?
Not even close. The LOI is just the engagement ring. You haven't walked down the aisle yet. The most critical part of the LOI is the clause on exclusivity.
Which means the seller has to stop dating other people.
Correct. For a set period, usually 60 to 90 days, the seller legally cannot talk to other potential buyers. And this gives the buyer the safety and confidence to spend millions of dollars on the next phase, due diligence.
And looking at our outline here, this section is labeled Where Deals Go to Die.
It is the absolute graveyard of M&A. Due diligence is the investigative phase. If the LOI is agreeing to buy a used car based on a nice photo, due diligence is putting that car up on the lift, shining a flashlight underneath, and realizing the transmission is held together with duct tape and hope.
And it's not just looking at the bank statements, though I assume that's part of it.
Financial due diligence is the bedrock. They generate something called a quality of earnings report, or a QOE.
What's the distinction there? I mean, profit is profit, isn't it? Why do you need a special report for that?
Oh, absolutely not. Reported profit is often fiction, or at least, optimistic storytelling. A QOE report looks for adjusted EBITDA. It looks for add backs.
Give me an example of an add back. What does that mean?
Let's say you are buying a family-owned business. The owner might be running all of his personal expenses through the company. The company pays for his country club membership, his family's car leases, maybe a consulting fee to his brother who doesn't actually do any work.
So the official profit on the books looks low because of all these personal expenses cluttering things up.
Exactly. But as the buyer, you are not going to keep paying for his country club. So you add back those expenses to the profit line to see the real operational earning power of the business. You're normalizing the numbers to see what the machine actually produces without all the noise.
That makes sense. But the diligence that really caught my eye in the source stack wasn't the financial stuff. It was the physical diligence. There's a document in here regarding Martin's Hotels.
Ah, yes. This is a fantastic case study on operational and physical diligence. It's so concrete.
It sounds glamorous, buying a chain of historic hotels, but the reality is pretty dusty.
It's hazardous. The diligence process uncovered what they called the CapEx trap. If you buy a beautiful historic hotel, you aren't just buying the brand and the reservations, you are buying the asbestos in the walls. You are buying the ancient oil tanks buried under the parking lot that might be leaking into the soil.
You are buying every single fire code violation.
Precisely. And if your diligence team comes back and says you need to spend €1,000,000 immediately just to bring the building up to code, that is a potential deal breaker. Or at the very least, it's a price chipper.
You go back to the seller and say, I love the hotel, but I'm knocking $1,000,000 off the price because I have to pay to fix your asbestos problem.
And the seller hates it, but they know you found the truth. They can't hide it.
Now, we can't talk about deal failure without talking about people. The sources say something like 70 to 90% of deals fail after signing because of culture.
It is the single most underestimated risk in every deal. You are merging two distinct tribes. Imagine merging a scrappy, hoodie-wearing Silicon Valley startup where everyone works until 2 a.m. with a rigid suit-and-tie bank where everyone clocks out at exactly 5 p.m.
It's an organ transplant rejection just waiting to happen.
The immune systems attack each other. The startup people feel totally stifled by the bureaucracy, so the best ones quit. The bank people feel threatened by the chaos, so they resist the integration at every turn. All that value you paid for just walks out the door.
There was a really specific legal nuance in the Belgian sources about this, something about a statutory director.
Ah, yes, the administrateur statutaire. This is a perfect example of why you need good local lawyers. In Belgium, if a director is appointed in the Articles of Incorporation, the actual constitution of the company, they have what amounts to super tenure.
Meaning you can't just fire them.
Not easily, not like a normal employee. To remove them, you have to formally amend the statutes of the entire corporation, which is a complex legal process that requires shareholder votes and notaries.
So imagine you buy a company thinking you're going to install your own CEO on day one, and you find out you're legally stuck with the old guy because you didn't read the bylaws closely enough.
That is a nightmare scenario, and it happens a lot more often than you'd think.
Let's pivot to technical due diligence. In 2026, if you're buying a software company, you aren't buying factories with machines. You're buying lines of code.
And you have to audit that code. You have to audit the GitHub repository. You need to know who wrote this code. Do they still work here? Is the code a chaotic mess of spaghetti that will completely break if we try to scale it?
And the open source trap.
This is a critical one.
Yeah.
So much modern software is built on open source libraries, but some open source licenses, like the GPL, are viral. If you use that code in your product, you might be legally required to make your own proprietary code public.
Whoa. So if the company you're buying accidentally used a viral open source library in their core engine,
They might have just rendered their most valuable intellectual property worthless. You can't sell a secret that you're legally required to publish for the whole world to see. If diligence catches this, the deal is dead instantly.
It's amazing how many landmines there are just waiting. I want to pivot to a case study that I found completely fascinating in the source stack. It's not a tech company, it's not a hotel, it's the Salvador Dali sculpture collection.
This is my favorite part of the research. It perfectly illustrates how M&A principles apply to any asset class. It's strange, it's artistic, but the business logic is exactly the same.
So paint the picture for us. A private equity group is buying what exactly? Not the paintings.
No, they are buying a portfolio of what the source document calls matrix assets, specifically the original molds that were used to cast Salvador Dali's bronze sculptures.
So they aren't buying one statue. They are buying the ability to make an infinite number of the statues.
Correct. They are buying the rights and the manufacturing capability. And the due diligence here is just incredible. It involves checking a technology called lost wax microfusion.
Which sounds like something from Star Trek, or maybe a high-end skincare line.
It's actually an ancient technique that's been adapted for high-precision industrial jewelry. It uses centrifugal force to push molten metal into every single tiny crevice of the mold.
Okay, but why does the buyer care so much about the casting technique? Shouldn't they just care about the artist's famous name?
Because the entire value of a Dali bronze is in the detail. If you are selling a high-end sculpture, the collector wants to be able to see Dali's actual fingerprints in the original clay. The diligence team has to verify that these molds have not degraded. They need to be able to produce casts that capture those microscopic details. If the mold is worn out, the asset is basically worthless.
So they're literally sending metallurgists to inspect art molds. That is due diligence in a nutshell.
Exactly. But here is where it gets very 2026, the strategic rationale. Why does a modern investment firm want to buy a bunch of old molds?
Let me guess. Synergy.
Technology synergy. The source material mentions their whole plan is to use VR and AR augmented reality to market and sell them.
How would that even work?
Imagine using your phone's camera to project a life-size Dali sculpture right into your living room to see how it looks next to the sofa before you spend $50,000 on it.
Wow.
Or creating a virtual reality gallery where a collector in Shanghai can walk around the sculpture that physically sits in a vault in Switzerland.
It shows that even in the art world, the value creation strategy is totally tech-driven. It's about bridging a physical asset with digital distribution.
It's M&A meeting the metaverse.
Speaking of technology, let's zoom out to the broader market in 2026. We mentioned earlier that AI is sourcing deals, but it's also doing the heavy lifting during the deal, acting as a co-pilot.
It's speeding everything up. One of the biggest bottlenecks in M&A has always been just reading. When you buy a company, you have to review thousands of contracts, leases, employment agreements, supplier contracts. It used to take armies of junior lawyers, weeks, even months to do this.
The dreaded data room dungeon.
Exactly. It was grueling, mind-numbing work. But now we have legal NLP, natural language processing. There's a source here referencing a data set called MAU, that's M-A-U-D, Merger Agreement Understanding.
What does MEU do?
It allows an AI to review over 39,000 legal clauses instantly. It can spot specific deal points faster than any human ever could. For example, a go shop provision.
Okay, define that for us.
A go shop provision is a clause that allows the seller to go out and try to find a better offer for a certain period, even after they've already signed the deal with you.
That's a really dangerous clause for a buyer. You absolutely want to know if that's buried on page 300 of some contract.
And the AI flags it in 3 seconds. It sends you an alert. Warning, clause 14.b allows the seller to shop your offer. It completely changes the risk profile of the deal.
That is unbelievably efficient. What about privacy? I mean, we are trading massive amounts of sensitive data during these investigations.
That's another huge use case. Automated redaction. In a virtual data room, you're sharing thousands of documents. You can't share employees' social security numbers or home addresses with the other side until after the deal closes. It's illegal.
So someone used to have to go through with a digital black marker and cross everything out.
Literally. Tedious, error-prone work. Now, an AI scanned all those documents and automatically blacks out the PII, personally identifiable information. It cleans the entire data room in minutes instead of days.
What about integration? Can AI help when you actually have to merge the two companies?
It's starting to. We're seeing generative AI being used to draft the 100-day plan. It takes all the risks and opportunities identified in diligence, overlaps them with the two company org charts, and generates a roadmap for the first 3 months. Week 1, merge the IT systems. Week 2, address the pension gap identified in HR diligence.
That's impressive. But there's a flip side to this AI coin, isn't there? The sources mention something called the data moat and a shift to SaaS 2.0.
This is a critical shift in 2026 contracts. If you are a tech buyer, you aren't just buying the software code anymore. You are buying the data. Specifically, you are buying the right to use the target company's client data to train your own AI models.
So if I'm a software company and I get bought, the new owner wants to feed all of my customer interactions into their master algorithm.
Yes. And this is becoming a non-negotiable clause in term sheets. It's an IP grab. The buyer demands the perpetual, irrevocable rights to that data for training purposes.
What if the company I'm buying has a really strict privacy policy with its customers?
That's the catch. If your privacy policy says, we will never use your data for AI training, you might have just made yourself unsellable to a strategic buyer, or at the very least, you've made yourself much less valuable.
Because the data is the real asset. The
Yeah.
software is just the wrapper.
Precisely. The code can be rewritten. The historical data cannot be replicated. That's the moat.
It seems like the regulatory landscape is desperately trying to catch up with all this. We have sources on what they call the patchwork quilt of regulation. It feels like governments are getting much more defensive.
The era of frictionless globalism is cooling off fast. It is getting much harder to do cross-border deals. Countries are putting up fences.
We have the EU Foreign Subsidies Regulation, or FSR.
This is a big one for Europe. The European Commission can now call in a deal if they suspect one of the companies involved has received subsidies from a foreign government that might distort the market.
So if a state-backed company from outside the EU tries to buy a key European tech firm,
The EU can step in and block it. They're essentially saying you aren't winning this deal because you're better. You're winning because your government gave you a bunch of free money. It creates a lot of uncertainty because you don't know if the EU will intervene until late in the process.
and then you have FDI screening foreign direct investment.
Right. Countries like Belgium, France, and Luxembourg have all tightened their rules considerably. If you are buying a company in a strategic sector, which now includes things like healthcare, energy, and even food security, the government itself has to approve the deal.
Sovereignty is becoming a deal breaker. It's not just about the free market anymore. It's about national security.
It absolutely is. You have to pass the national security test before you can even get to talking about the price.
So looking ahead to the rest of 2026, what are the big trends? The sources mention a rebound in activity.
Yes, interest rates are finally stabilizing, which is bringing the private equity firms back into the game. Money is becoming cheaper again, so they can do more deals. But the strategy has shifted. We're seeing more scope deals rather than scale deals.
What's the difference between scope and scale?
A scale deal is the old way. Buying a direct competitor just to get bigger. I buy you, now we are double the size and have more market share.
Simple enough.
A scope deal is buying a company to get a new capability that you didn't have before. It's about adding to your arsenal.
Give me an example.
Look at the green manufacturing sector. The sources say car companies aren't just buying more car factories, they're buying recycling companies that specialize in handling old vehicle parts and batteries.
Why would they do that?
Because they know they need to become circular to survive. They need the scope, the capability to recycle their own batteries to meet future environmental regulations. They are buying a skill set they don't have and don't understand because they know they need it to survive in the next decade.
That's fascinating. So bringing this all together, we started with this mind-bending $3 trillion figure. We've looked at the machinery, the traps, the AI, the regulations. It really feels like M&A is this high-stakes poker game, but played with other people's entire organizations.
It is. It requires the detective skills of a forensic accountant, the foresight of a fortune teller, and now the raw processing power of an AI supercomputer. But I think there is one thing we shouldn't lose sight of in all of this.
And what's that?
The human element. We touched on culture earlier, but it really is the deciding factor. You can have the best AI models in the world, the most perfect financial synergies on a spreadsheet, and the sharpest legal team using MAUD to scan every single clause. But if the people at company A fundamentally hate the people at company B, the deal will fail. Period.
If the tribes don't get along, the village burns.
Exactly. The spreadsheet doesn't matter if the culture turns toxic. At the end of the day, relationships still drive the economy.
That is a great takeaway. But I want to leave our listeners with a bit of a provocation, something to think about based on where all this technology is going.
Go for it.
We've discussed AI sourcing deals. We've discussed AI valuing deals. We've discussed AI auditing deals. We are clearly moving toward a world where the entire process is digitized and automated.
Hmm.
So, at what point does the human become the bottleneck?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Will we reach a point, maybe not next year, but soon, where an AI agent for a massive conglomerate autonomously identifies a target, negotiates the price with the target's own AI agent, and executes the acquisition contracts, all in a matter of milliseconds?
Algorithmic M&A. It sounds completely dystopian, but if you look at high-frequency trading in the stock market, we are already there with shares. We trade millions of shares in microseconds without any human intervention. Doing it with entire companies feels like the next logical, if terrifying, step.
An autonomous corporate Pac-Man just eating up the market based on algorithms.
And if that happens, what is the role of the CEO? Are they just the person who hits the approve button on the AI's recommendation once a quarter? Or do they become obsolete too?
Something to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the machinery of mergers and acquisitions.
My pleasure. It was fun.
And to our listeners, next time you see a headline about a billion-dollar buyout, remember, it's not just money changing hands. It's culture, it's code, it's hidden oil tanks, and it's a whole lot of drama behind the scenes. We'll see you next time.